I am Richard.
And I'm Sophie, and we came from New Zealand to visit North America.
Up the front, it's pretty much a plain old simple Sprinter van. Nothing out of the ordinary when you look through the windows. The important feature, I guess, is the curtains, which are tucked up in here. There's two of them. Keep light in and keep light out to be discreet, and they also Velcro down the sides.
So they completely stop the light, especially with the double thickness. The Velcro really goes to the very top so that there's absolutely no light coming through. We'll see later we also have something for our skylight to make sure there's no light here either. So we can cook, we can read books, we can have all the lights we want, and it's impossible to see from the outside.
We also chose a very bland grey colour just so that if you happen to be peeking through the front window you just kind of see
Dark.
Grey in the back, nothing too suspicious. They came from IKEA actually.
And then we can attach them when we drive so they don't annoy us with those ties, which are pretty convenient and easy to fold.
So this is the kitchen. The basic unit for it all came from IKEA, flat pack, nice and easy. We've got a stainless splashback behind there which we all got cut, glued straight onto the wall. A nice hard bamboo bench top. We've got our sink. That was actually made out of just a stainless steel bowl.
A salad bowl.
Salad bowl.
They're like $2
They're
at
about
Walmart.
$5 or something instead of $200 for an official sink. So we just took that bowl and put a plug in it. We've got our tap with running water. Oh no, we're out of water. We're out of water right now, but that's okay. Underneath, we've got a bit of food storage. We've got our two tanks, grey and fresh. We chose to go for that system of 15 litre tanks just because it's so easy to fill them up and empty them. We can fill them up at any tap, any drinking fountain, we can fill the water, and the grey water we can empty in any toilet, down any sink basically. We just have to disconnect it, go and tip it. It's really easy, super discreet, so yeah.
The one thing about the water that's quite nice is you'll note that there's no pump that appears, because when we went to the shop and saw the size of them we were quite disappointed about how much it would impact our storage, especially because we left that until the end. Once we had all the containers in the room was locked, we were like, where are we going to put that thing? We find a pump in a marine shop that's actually meant to be underwater as opposed to outside the container. So it's a little thing about this big, and it goes through the lid in the tank, and we just have to untie the lid and the pump comes with it. So the pump gets changed from tank to tank, and it was really cheap compared to the real ones, and it's quite quiet.
These tanks take maybe 1 minute to change out, and we have other tanks in the back, so we've got more fresh water if we run out. On this side we've got our little gas hob, and then we've got some drawers. We've got soft closers on them, so all from IKEA, easy to put together.
They stay out too, so if you're on like a slope, they don't go back in, so that's quite convenient because you don't always choose where you park, and because you want to be like kind of undercover, you don't want to come with a big thing to put the car on horizontal balance.
And then under we've just got a little bit of extra storage for fruit and veggies and
again,
like
this is an IKEA box, and you'll find it under the
also from IKEA,
closet department to put your socks and undies. Works very well for apples.
Yep.
Then at the top we've got a big shelf, which is really convenient for all the bulky stuff that doesn't really fit nicely in the cupboard. So that goes with, say, breads or all the bulk food that we buy.
We tend to go to bulk food shops and get things like lentils and stuff like that to eat a bit cheap.
These are normally not handrails. These are like things for opening the doors, handles, but it works really well to prevent the things from collapsing. We also find those boxes at IKEA, which are really great because they're soft, so they take any shape, and they don't rattle when you drive, which is a big thing, and they don't slide too much, so we were quite happy with these. A
little light, which is operated from here, also from IKEA. It's 12 volts, so it can connect straight to the battery with no transformer or anything like that.
How is it cooking in here?
It's good.
Really well. We've got the 2 burners, which is enough for 2 people. We don't really need 4. The propane tank is actually big enough that we don't need to refill until 3 months, which is pretty much nothing. And it's a really small one, it's only this big, but it's quite efficient. We cook every morning. He has like eggs and bacon, so it takes a bit of propane. And then in the evening we always have a hot meal like pasta or things like that. We don't really try and save propane because we go for lentils, pasta, things that take a long time to cook. But it works quite well. It doesn't create any problem with the heat. It's resistant. It's very easy to clean. That was the whole point of having that. And behind that, which we don't see, there's actually like nearly 2 inches of foam. So it's the whole van has been insulated and sprayed with foam, so that we don't get too hot or too cold, and also that works quite well when we bring some other heat sources.
Yeah, so the spray foam was really important to us. It insulates the van to keep it warm, so you're not just trying to sleep inside a metal box. It keeps it quieter when you drive down the road and at night when everything's closed up, and it cuts down on all the condensation. You've got no bare metal anywhere. The foam is straight on the metal and sealed to it, and so we don't get any condensation in the van anywhere. We're careful to put pots on our, lids on our pots and so forth when we're cooking. We cook with just the skylight open a crack, and it's fine. We have no issues. It's always been really dry, no moisture.
We would really encourage people to have their van insulated. It's a lot quieter too, so you can make a bit more noise inside and not being heard outside, but you can also sleep in a bit more noisy places. And yeah, the absence of condensation is like a real changer. We didn't have that in our previous van, and we can really see the difference. It is very expensive, and one of the rare things that it's pretty impossible to do yourself, because the products that they sell for you to do aren't as performing as the one for the professional. It's a really messy job. It takes a lot of time to prepare so that it doesn't go everywhere, and yet even with that, still a lot of time to clean all the mess, but it's definitely worth it.
I think that was the most expensive step in the van, was to get it insulated. Obviously it's the first step too. We've got our fridge over here. This is a 12 volt fridge, so it doesn't run on propane. It's very economic on the battery, so not economic to buy. They are reasonably expensive. It can run a solid week without charging the battery, just on a single battery. We have a secondary battery, but we can be stationary for a week with no solar or input of any kind, and the battery won't die. The lights draw very little, and then other than that we're just charging phones. We've got a propane alarm. That's about it, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it for
electricity use. So a battery can last a long time, yeah. And yeah, then underneath we've got these storage boxes, little latches to stop them flying forward when we drive. Pretty simple, they just swivel in. We forgot to latch this one time and it's a bit broken. It's replacing, but this is our wardrobe. This is kind of like a stuff box. The standard boxes from IKEA, we found them before we did the spacing and just made a size that they could slip in and out. Super easy compared to setting up drawer runners, and much cheaper and lighter and all sorts of things. So, and it means if you're using this as a weekend van, you could pull them out, take them into your house, unpack everything, repack, put them in, nice and easy. Next to that we've got a bit of a shoe rack and a fire extinguisher. Our little couch, this is where we sit for dinner.
Where we spend most of our time really. We can use it like that. We can also remove the fridge and have a guest, because this is the same length as the bed, so you get to sleep here.
Sleep a third person here.
And you can also lay against the back and have your feet here, which is a nice way to read
nice and comfy.
Without being on the bed.
Our dining room table is actually attached to the side door, so if I close that, it's in here. This lining on the door just to make it all nice and tidy, and then this is our table. It's super tight between the van and the door when the thing's closed, so it's got this little notch out of it, little groove in here, but it's just a case of opening a couple of latches and then that folds down.
Here we go.
And we've got our table.
Ready for dinner.
This is our dinner space.
This is the same bamboo as the bench, which is quite convenient. That's really nice if you want to work. Say if you've got a laptop or a tablet or something, it's pretty awesome to eat because you've got like a decent space. Because it's like a one
Yeah.
person. If you have a guest, you can also put like another chair here and have someone on the other side. The fact that it doesn't have a leg means that we can have a floor that's completely flat without a big hole in it, and also we don't have to store away a leg, which is something we didn't want.
Or a tabletop,
So that took us a bit of thinking. We didn't have that the first 3 months, and we definitely like having a table to eat compared to eating on our knees.
Yeah.
It's been a huge improvement.
And this is one thing we haven't seen anywhere else on any of the vans or on the internet is this design. So we're quite happy with how it worked, because it was a bit tricky, and it allowed us to keep all the floor space clear, which was really important. You're living in such a small space that it's nice to have that kind of 1.5 by 1.5 square meter. It's a huge luxury in a van. So yeah, so that's the table.
And the reason why we've got 2 latches is to avoid any rattling when we drive.
It's all
so
nice and
it
solid, it
actually
doesn't
makes
move at all.
no noise, which is really nice. We've left some space behind the passenger seat because in our secret plans, maybe one day we'll put a fireplace. So we haven't yet been through a full winter, but we can already tell that it's getting cooler here in Alaska. So we've seen some fireplaces for boats that would fit perfectly well here, and that would be wood, because we didn't really want to have propane at the same time. And we feel like wood would dry the van and feel warmer.
The practical thing to do would be to have a propane heater or a diesel heater in the van, but it just feels so much more homely to have a little wood burner and to burn a few pine cones and a few sticks inside the van. Really makes it feel like home, I think, rather than flicking a switch and turning on your propane.
So that's why we've got space for that here.
We've left a space for that, and we would probably have that fireplace as a removable fireplace, so we can take it out in summer and put it back in winter when we need it.
Going further back, on top of the fridge, we've got our library. It's actually quite useful because obviously you travel, so you need some knowledge about where you're going, and there's always those rainy days where you're stuck. It's been quite nice, and we've seen that there's a lot of libraries and a lot of places that sell really cheap books, or you can exchange books with others, so it's about the right size. You don't need a lot more. We've got our little mascot. That's our little Kiwi to remind us New Zealand. It does sing the haka.
I'm not really a rugby fan, but rugby is our national sport, and the haka is performed at the start of this. It's the national dance, I guess, of the indigenous people, so it's a little bit of culture from New Zealand. So yeah, and that sits up there on our kind of knick-knack shelf where we have him and phone chargers and tissues and all that kind of stuff that you kind of want access to regularly. Is on that shelf under the books. Below
that there's a huge space because the fridge opens by the top, which is a bit of a bummer because it takes quite a bit of space, but that was the best fridge we could find. And we made use of that space by keeping memories of our trip, because obviously you're away from families, you don't always have access to Wi-Fi or able to talk to your friends, so it's quite nice to keep a little kind of diary of what we did. So all the people that we meet and become a best friend with or do something with, that leaves us their address. We put them on the wall and then we can remember that. And in the same sort of idea, we've got all the trophies we get. So we cross the Arctic Circle, we hike some hoodoos, all sort of things like that, so we put them there. And we also have a few pictures on the front wall to remind us of the past times, I guess. Yeah, which is quite nice. Then we've got, I think, the thing that we're quite happy about, which is the skylight.
Ah, yes.
Skylight was obviously a huge thing because you have to make a hole in the roof. So there you are, it's raining like hell, because that's how it was in February in Vancouver. And you have to make a hole in the roof, and you have to do that before you do anything else, because otherwise that's not going to work. And so you can't wait. So you find that railway bridge that happens to be on top of that Home Depot car park, where you can park under and try and not be too wet. And I'm there being like, Richard, are you really sure that's the right dimension? We can't really have that one wrong. We noticed that all the RVs have like plastic sort of top that pops
really
out a lot, and they're quite visible for a start, and they don't look that strong, and we were not sure they were never going to leak. So I thought about a marine hatch because I've been doing a lot of sailing, so definitely these things don't leak because they're designed for that. It turns out it worked really well because they're low profile too, to try and not slow down the board.
It's only about an inch tall.
So I think they're a lot better for fuel consumption, and they also, nobody can see it's there unless there's like several stories building next to us. It can be locked also, so that no one can open it, and it can also be locked with a little bit of a vent,
A little crack.
which means that you can leave it all day to dry the van if required, and it opens fully
all the way to.
so that's a really nice feature, and it brings lots of light to the van.
It's also been really good for wildlife photography.
Yes,
When we drive down the road and there's a bear, and Sophie can come back here and stick her head out
and take
and
pictures.
take some pictures of a bear or a moose or something like that, safe from inside the van.
It's also proved really useful to watch fireworks.
Fireworks.
We've had that for the National Day of Canada, which was pretty unique. It has one downside: mosquitoes want to come in, but we've got our anti-mosquito feature, which we designed ourselves too.
It's got a couple of suction cups and some elastic and some toggles, and we can stick that up to the glass. That keeps out the mosquitoes, nice and easy. Or if we want to sleep at night, we've got a piece of foil and a foam cushion basically cut to fit, and that blocks out all the light. It's completely black in here. With this and the curtains at the front, it's like dark, you can't see anything, which makes for a good night's sleep, especially if you're
On
in
the
the
Arctic
far
Circle.
north in the Arctic Circle or somewhere like that, and it's daylight 24 hours a day. It's good.
We've got the bed, which is our last feature. It's a normal bed, like with a normal mattress, and it's on slats, which is really nice because the first it's comfortable, and then the mat doesn't get wet because it's completely
It's nice and
ventilated.
ventilated.
The only thing is it's kind of 2 inches, 3 inches shorter than a normal bed because the van is not quite as wide as a double bed. So we've cut the foam. We selected a mattress made of foam, but it's a standard mattress. Cut it.
We're reasonably short, which is nice. So I would be 1.67
And I'm 157.
So it works for us.
Yeah, you can.
I don't know what the overall measurement is, but I can certainly lie down in here without having to have bent legs or anything like that.
Same with me.
So, So that works. And when we were setting up the height of the bed, we were very intentional to. We wanted to be able to sit up in bed, but at the same time, we wanted as much storage space underneath as possible, which we'll show you in a moment. So we tried to come to a kind of a compromise where we could sit in here comfortably, read a book, watch a movie or something. We've got a little USB plug up here, so we can plug in a tablet or something, or have our phones running off that. We've also got a couple of little boxes here. It's handy for kind of bedtime things, spare pair of socks and undies or things like that.
IKEA again.
IKEA again, yep. IKEA is fantastic. I don't know, I can't remember what they cost, but they wouldn't have been expensive.
No.
What about the side paneling here?
That came all from Home Depot. It's nice and thin. It would be about 8mm or 1/3 of an inch, so it's nice and light. It's tongue and groove, so it slots together, but because it's so thin and slots together, you can kind of bend it around the curves of the van, and it gives it a really nice feel. It's all varnished and everything.
Yeah, it wasn't varnished, so we put 3 coats of varnish to make sure that it's completely waterproof and we don't get anything soaked in.
We also put behind that, as well as the foam insulation, where it was attached, we put some in-seal tape, which is just basically a rubber tape to separate it from the outside of the van, just as a thermal break, so it's not as cold.
So it's screwed in the ribs.
It's screwed
the
to
van.
the structural ribs of the van.
And that's why all the foam had to be trimmed, because when they spray it kind of overflows and then you don't get
You
that
need to
nice
cut it
flat
back flush
surface,
with
so
that.
you need to recut everything, which is pretty time consuming process. We use a different product for the back
Load on the
and
back.
for the side of the door, because of the length and the fact that it's not supported. There's nothing to screw on.
And it also breaks up the van a bit, so it doesn't all feel like you're
A Sweden sauna.
just in a sauna. You kind of get a different feeling.
Also, the panels are removable. So if there's something happening with the locking mechanism of the door, it's actually easy to access.
Everything's screwed, so if you need to get to some cables or some of the mechanical things, you can take it off and get in there nice and easy. So.
And we've got the light just for the bed, which means that you can go to bed and switch off the light without having to cross half of the van. We can remove all the cushions to make more space if somebody wants to sleep in here. It's only a Velcro, you get a lot more space. Same with the bottom one. We can remove it if we want.
At the same time, you can probably see those slats that the bed's on, nice and comfy.
I guess now it's time to go and see what we've got under the bed.
Yes. Okay, so this is the back of the van. Inside kind of functions as our garage, I guess. We've got more boxes for storage, same as the ones in the front. This one's full of climbing gear, ropes and cams and stuff. That's what we like to do and kind of why we're here. Next to it is assorted camping gear and things like that. Down in this one we've got spare water tanks, a few of them poked in here. We also designed this to have space for skis, so our skis can go in the side there. This is the box of all the tools I had to work with when we built this. They all came on the plane, so there's like 10 kilos worth to try and do. I'm used to having a lot more than that, so it was a bit of a challenge to not have all my toys, but you've got to make do.
We've put some wood to stop the tanks from moving so that they don't damage everything else, and again they don't rattle because it's quite important. And another thing which is hidden behind the scene is that at the very bottom of that there's a bucket, and in the bucket is actually the propane tank. The bucket is sealed so that if there's a leak, it doesn't leak in the van, it leaks in the bucket. And then there's a
the
hole.
bucket is vented through the bottom of the van.
At the bottom to make sure that propane gets out and not in the van. To be super sure, we also obviously have a propane detector, but we found that was a clever one to try and avoid any risk with the propane.
It avoids having a door on the outside of the van, which is not that discreet. And that's actually accessed from a little trapdoor below the fridge, so we just lift the fridge out and we can change our propane once every 3 months or so.
It costs $5 to fill, so it is a very tiny one.
And it lasts for 3 months, cooking twice a day.
And it gets everybody laughing when we go to refill it, because they're like, what? Yeah.
If you want to continue to the outside, what you'll notice is that we intentionally chose a very discreet vehicle. It's got no windows. Usually when it's sunny and nice, we're outside anyway. We don't like to sit in the van and look out the window. We like to be outside enjoying it. So when we park up, it's just a plain white van, no windows, no one can see in with those curtains, and we can be there nice and cozy inside and park anywhere we want basically.